May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Peter Coyote. And Peter is a Zen teacher, a Zen student, and you may know him as an actor, a writer. If you knew him a long time ago, you might have known him as a digger. He was an actor a long time ago, too, in, theater. Anyway, we get into all that. We get into everything. I don't have to go on about it. Look, if you want to know about Peter as an actor, just go to imdb.com and write Peter Coyote, and then you'll see he's been in like a zillion, I think he said 160 films. And if you want to know about Peter as a Zen teacher, you can go to petercoyote.com, petercoyote. Also, there's a section on cuke.com for Peter. So just go to cuke.com, cuke.com, write Coyote or Peter Coyote in the site search box, and you'll see his page. And I can see I have to update it. I will do that before you hear this. And he's going to, we talk about various things, but he's going to talk about his books, and I am going to mention them now. One thing first I'll say is that he has a book supposedly coming out March 19th, 2024. I assume it will. But, sometimes they put these dates and it comes in a little later. But, so this is called Zen in the Vernacular, Things as It Is. And he'll talk about that. The first book I'm aware of his is Sleeping Where I Fall, a Chronicle. That is a cool book. That's sort of like about his life. Then there's The Lone Ranger and Tonto Meet Buddha, Masks, Meditation, and Improvised Play to Induce Liberated States. So that's, a paperback, a Kindle, and an Audible audiobook. And I'm sure he reads, actually they all are. He reads his own because he probably reaches more people with his voiceover than anyone. He's really big voiceover. He does all of Ken Burns' films. Oh, yeah, and then he did a book of poetry called Tongue of a Crow. And he was involved with some others. Oh, yeah, The Rain Man's Third Cure and A Regular Education. Yeah, he's written a lot of stuff there. So anyway, I see here he narrated Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And he narrated Zen mind, beginner's mind. Okay. So, look, that's enough about Peter. He's, I should say, what's his Zen group called? Wild Dog Zen? Something like that. Anyway, if you just go to petercoyote.com, there's a section on Buddhist priest, activist. Oh, I didn't mention that. Yeah, Peter is really into engaged Buddhism, and you'll see that in his upcoming book, Vernacular Zen. Voice artist, writer, and actor. Those are the, on petercoyote.com. Those are the sections. So look, that's enough of that stuff. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end our meditation and give Peter Coyote a call.
Hello.
Peter.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? What are you up to right now?
Well, this moment, I got married on Saturday.
I did not know. I didn't know that.
Third time is the charm.
Yeah.
To a wonderful woman I wish I'd met when I was 40, except I would have messed it up.
Right.
So she's retired nurse, and who was also in charge of all the Napa County nursing. She was an executive. So she was great there, and we just get along like a house of fire. It's completely stress-free. We can talk about anything, no drama, and we spend most of our time laughing.
That's
so the
good.
other thing I'm doing is I'm doing the most boring line-by-line edit of the book that I sent you.
Yeah.
Which was so filled with typos and badly expressed stuff. So for days, I've been writing stuff like page 26, paragraph 3, line 9, change wouldn't to never.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've been doing that. And then we are going away for the weekend because we had not planned to have a honeymoon until the spring. But we dove into reality too quickly after the ecstasy of our wedding, and we decided to go away for a couple of days and just hang out.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm doing is I'm writing a big article about politics, about how we got to January 6th.
Yeah.
And I'm basically starting from Ronald Reagan, who declared government the enemy,
right,
to Newt Gingrich, who described the Democrats as evil, to a series of economic policies as even the Democratic Party turned neoliberal and, coveted the money of the big banks and finance institutions. And the blue-collar urban and rural people got left behind. And my point is that people don't shit in the Capitol because they love Donald Trump. They shit in the Capitol because the system has let them down.
Yeah.
So I've been writing. Maybe I'll submit it to Rolling Stone or The Atlantic or something.
Yeah.
Larry Tribe, Lawrence Tribe is going to vet it for me and read it.
Yeah.
And so that's what else am I doing? I'm
cool.
playing the guitar a lot. I'm studying with a guy trying to learn how to play lead for the last 5 years.
Oh,
And I'm thinking of resurrecting a book that I wrote once that my publisher didn't want to publish. It's called Lies We Like to Believe. And each chapter heading is like a phrase like, we love our children. And then the chapter is like a litany of the pollutions we put in their food and the atmosphere, what we've done to the education budgets, how we've, anyway, nuclear, cheap, safe, and green. There's there's 12, 14 chapters. And I would have to hire somebody to redo all the research to make sure it's current. But that's about it. And then I'm studying to putting together a curriculum. I transmitted one of my students who's going to be taking over the Sangha, a man named Richard Lawley, who studied in Paris for 20 years and is just a natural. He loves it. He's calm. He's helpful. He's a priest by nature. And then we've got 3 students that want to take Jukai and 3 that we agree are ready for lay entrustment, which is, Mel Weitzman's Green Rock Sioux program for people that don't want to be priests. But so we're working out a curriculum for them, what they should know and how to run a small group, and so they could make little satellites and things like that.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty much the totality of it.
Really? Well, you're always fully engaged. I really appreciate it. That is great. That is heavy. Now, your lineage comes through Lou Richmond, right?
Well, actually, to be precise about it, my lineage actually comes through Mel Weitzman, who did not take transmission from Richard Baker, and he left, and Lou Richmond left. And Mel Weitzman went to Japan and got transmitted from Hoitsu,
right,
Suzuki Roshi's son. And then when Lou came back, he burned his silks and everything he had done with Richard Baker and went out and started a software business. And when he came back and decided he wanted to re-enter like Buddhist practice, he received transmission from Mel. So basically my lineage is Suzuki Roshi to Hoitsu to Mel and the Berkeley Zen Center.
To Lou. To Mel, to Lou, to you.
Oh, through Lou, yeah. Exactly right.
Right. So Lou and Ed Sanderson did the Vimala Sangha. Is that still going?
Yes. Well, I don't know now because Ed is moving. I think he's moving to Enso Village. Enso Village is this Zen Center retirement home, and that they partnered with the Quakers. And Ed Satterson and Susan O'Connell have done yeoman's work, raising millions and millions of dollars to get this built in concert with a Quaker group that builds retirement centers. And I've actually visited one of the Quaker group centers in Santa Rosa, and it's completely charming. Everybody has their own apartment and little gardens and back spaces. So Ed was transmitted by Lou. Ed, Peter Shearson, Al Tribe, Karen Geiger, and me. Karen died and Al died. Peter Shearson decided his family could only support one Zen teacher.
Right.
So he's not doing that. And Ed went back to Zen Center. But yes, so Vimala Sangha has been running classes, and up to a couple of months ago, I knew it was still operative. I'm not sure about right now.
And what's the name of your Sangha?
Wild Dog Sangha.
That's great. That's great.
It's got a little Coyote footprint logo.
Does it have a physical place?
Well, yes and no. When I bought my little farm in Sebastopol, there was a little outbuilding that was a grow house for weed growers here.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, I'd say it's about 16 by 10. And I stripped it down to the gunnels and I put in, I think it holds 6 or 8 tatami mats. And I had a little altar built and, had it put in sheetrock and painted it and put little lights in it. So that's where I do jukai ceremonies and transmission and stuff like that. But most of my sangha is actually on Zoom.
Yeah.
Because I have a student in Atlanta. I have another one in Florida. I have two in Berkeley. Two in Berkeley, one in San Francisco who's moving to Thailand. So basically, this Sangha was put together from my Dharma talks that I did during the pandemic from March 2020 to March 2021, that Judy Gilbert actually pulled a bunch of people together from the most interesting letters and comments that they wrote. It was a little bit of a surprise to me, and it didn't actually work out, but a number of the people stayed and formed another Sangha, which is basically sort of a women's group in Sausalito. And I've been meeting with mine for the last several years. We meet Monday nights and we come together for ceremonies, but it's a little arduous for people to come from Atlanta and Florida.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a lot of strength in not being chained to a place, especially in modern times when your places cost so much.
Yes, that's true. And it's you get the kind of tail wagging the dog where I remember at Zen Center when the Tasahara Bakery was in full swing, the students who were getting up at 4 a.m. to bake bread didn't have time to sit.
Yeah.
So that's not so good for them.
Yeah. It was a good experiment, and it had its life. The businesses, the Zen Center businesses, were an interesting period.
An instant what?
It was an interesting period where Richard Baker.
Oh yes.
Got so much going there, the Zen Center has just kept evolving and changing. I hear a lot of complaints about it, and I have my own complaints. But when I just tell people, well, just wait; it'll evolve into something else in a while.
Yes, exactly. Well, you have to give it. My book, Vernacular Zen, is in some way a reaction to what I call the Japanismo of Zen Center.
Yeah.
But it's never without appreciation. I mean, I changed more in my 8 years there than I ever have since, and I'm completely grateful. But I think that there are some inherent problems in too close an imitation of Japanese culture in America.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that I'm trying to overcome with my book is that it tends to keep the practice of Buddhism as foreign.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do in this book, it's called Zen in the Vernacular. What I'm trying to do is loosen the Japanese gift wrapping, not get rid of it, just loosen it a little.
Yeah.
So that it's a little easier for people to see the actual gift of the Buddha, and then explain those gifts in kind of colloquial American speech and those states of mind as human states, which a number of people have have experienced.
Yeah.
I've known women who disappeared into their knitting or machinists who disappeared into their work, and it doesn't have to be called by a Japanese name. It's not a bad idea, but I wanted people to know that these are not exotic, that the Buddha wasn't Japanese.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, that's true. And also the emphasis on priests and being a priest in Zen Center.
Yes, as a promotion. It's become a promotion instead of an act of service.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the balance between I think that the lay path is should have just as much status, and it does in the mind of most of us, but that's always something that balance needs to be looked at. And,
right. Well, that's why. So, for instance, when I transmitted Richard Lobley, I gave him a brown robe because my own practice is a little unorthodox compared to Zen centers, and I didn't want him to have to answer any odd questions. But from this point on, both for Jukai and both for priest's ordination and transmission, we're going to green robes and rakusus. Just to establish a very clear delineation for lay practice.
Yeah.
And do you remember Tia Strozer?
Oh, very well.
Yeah. So Tia left and she started the Brooklyn Zen Center.
Yeah.
And she's ordaining lay priests. I mean, the role of a priest is to care for the Sangha. Why does it have to be monastic? And she's actually transmitted one woman, a very brilliant woman named Pam Weiss, who is a lay practitioner. She may be the only one I know of that's literally transmitted. So,
my first wife, Daya Goldschlag, got lay entrustment or whatever it's called from Tia a year ago or so.
Was she at Zen Center or in Brooklyn?
Oh, Daya, she's in Spokane.
Oh, I see. Well, I work a lot with Tia. One of the things I've been putting together from Tia and who's the head of Berkeley Zen Center now? Alan Sanaki.
Right.
I've been assembling like their ideas of what training and curriculum for a lay entrustment should include. Because I think that most Buddhist practice in the United States is really a lay practice.
That's right.
And one of the problems with the cross-pollination of Japan and America is that, a Japanese priest, a Japanese guy goes to a temple and he trains for 2 or 3 years, and then he leaves and he takes over a temple, and he or she spends the rest of their life in service.
Yeah.
Well, there are no temples to take over in America, so these people stayed at Zen Center.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, after 20 or 30 years, Zen Center was responsible for them.
Yeah.
And I kind of equate it to actors who went to acting school and loved it and stayed on. But they didn't quite understand that you're not an actor till you get a job as an actor.
Yeah.
And you're not really a priest until you're taking care of a group of people.
Yeah.
So we're all working that stuff out. It's all, so far, it's very friendly and not competitive at all, but that's the direction me and mine are going in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is a subject that I think about a lot, and I think you're dealing with it really well. Say, where did your spiritual path start? I mean, where would you put it? How far back?
Well, really, really early. I mean, I can remember seeing a robin for the first time and distinguishing it from the background like it was heavily outlined in ink. And it just struck me as a miraculous, self-evident creation. As I got a little older, I came under the tutelage of my ranch foreman, who used to be a game warden fighting the egret hunters in Florida to protect the egrets from the milliners, Italian milliners, killing them for their feathers. And he was a deeply spiritual guy without any gobbledygook. And when I was 10, he gave me a book called Kinship with All Life. And it was about a guy who was dog sitting this movie dog named Strongheart. And he became so under the influence of how intelligent this dog was and how gifted it was that it opened up his sensibilities until finally he was able to get houseflies to jump from finger to finger. He could communicate with everything. So when I was so I sort of had this feeling about life and awareness, that dogs had awareness, people had awareness, and especially with mammals, you know, the mammal brain is like a gland for producing images. And when we train a dog, I have 2 dogs, when we train a dog, we think we're teaching the dog a word. I think what we're doing is we're transmitting an image to the dog and associating it with the word. So when I was about 14, I started reading the Beats, and all these guys were talking about Buddhism. So I started reading Buddhism, whatever I could find about it. And it just seemed to be the way I saw things, that everything was connected, and it seemed pretty obvious that if there was no sunlight and no water, nothing would exist. If there were no microbes in the soil, there were no pollinating insects. But I didn't know anything about practice. And then when I came out here for graduate school in San Francisco in 64, around 66, I met Gary Snyder. And I thought, wow, well, if anybody knows what this Zen stuff is about, it's going to be him. He lived for 9 years in a Japanese monastery. He was the assistant anja to the teacher. He married a Japanese wife. He writes and reads Japanese. So he and I became really good friends, and I consider him my first teacher, really. And when I took Jukai, he signed the back of my first Roxu along with Lou. Lou left space for him.
Oh.
So it wasn't until I came to Zen Center in 74 and started going out with Marilyn McCann that I was ever introduced to sitting. I didn't really know what that was about. And I did not take to it particularly readily after 10 years of absolute anarchic freedom in the counterculture. The idea of, like, you know, I had long hair. I wore my long underwear into the Zendo. I didn't know one end from the other. I thought I was just there to polish up my enlightenment a little bit. And who were these squares? It really snapped me up and called me to attention. And I stayed there for almost 8 years, but like a layman, because I was working for Jerry Brown. So, you know, and I had then when I was 39, so in 74, I was 33. When I was 39, I started taking a gamble for the movies because I needed to make some money. And so I had to do my Zen practice in between running off to make bad TV and a couple of good films.
I remember you at Zen Center way back then. At 74 and 75, I was at Tassar. And I'd come in some. I remember you back then. And I remember seeing you at Magic Theater, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's when I decided to go back to try acting. I'd been an actor in college, and I'd been an actor in the Actors Workshop in San Francisco when I first came. When I made the decision to try it again, I did 2 years of plays back to back at the Magic Theater
Right.
to kind of get in the swing of things. And I started teaching an acting class at the UC Berkeley Extension in San Francisco. And that got my juices rolling again, reminded me what it was about. And then I dove into Hollywood, and I figured out a way to get an agent, and I got lucky. I turned out that I was slightly older than the current crop of leading ladies, and they were feeling self-conscious about their age. They were getting close to their sell-by date in Hollywood terms, and so they wanted to be seen with an older guy. So that worked for a while until they decided it was hipper to be seen with a younger guy.
Right.
But
right.
then I was already in and operating.
Right. I remember talking to you on the corner, and maybe you were living straight up above the grocery store, catty corner from the city center. And you showed me. You said, "Hey, look at this." You said, you told me. You said, "I've decided I have to take a step beyond just doing all this free acting in these plays and stuff." And you showed me your resume and one picture of you with a guitar and some pictures. And you were just starting out to do that, and you'd gotten an agent. And I thought, oh, that's neat. I wonder how that'll go. And anyway, I still remember that quite well.
160 films later, I retired a few years ago when my kids were out of grad school debt free. I became an actor. Really, it sounds crazy, but I became an actor because I didn't want to write for money. The thing that's really sacred to me was writing. And I'm an okay actor, but I'm not Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm not Sean Penn. I'm not Robert De Niro. And I kind of knew that. And I was exceedingly lucky to have as long a career and everything as I did. But I always felt a little bit out of place. I didn't have time. If I'd been younger and had the money, I would have taken my family to London and studied at the Royal Academy or Lambda or something. But I couldn't. I got my SAG card at 39, and my dad had died below broke. There was nothing at all from my family, and I'd spent 10 years in the counterculture instead of, making a living. So I just had to accept that, and I did it until I didn't have to do it anymore. And now I do voiceovers because all the Ken Burns films and things, because I don't have to leave home.
I just saw you in the Sunseed, The Journey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I helped Amartat Cohen with the Zen Center part, and he had a lot of questions. He lives in Malaysia. He's coming here in January. Anyway, that was neat. I went, whenever I hear you or see you, go, hey, there's Peter, and that was neat.
Yeah, well, you and Dan Welch were about the first normal people I met at Zen Center. I mean, guys I would live with and hang with. And then as I relaxed a little bit and saw who people actually were, well, I made more friends. But from the jump, it was you and Dan Welch.
That's. Are you still in touch with Dan?
I certainly am.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
He's a bit of a recluse.
Yep.
And he confessed to me that he didn't really care that much about Buddhism.
Yeah,
what he cared about was the aesthetic. And he's making these beautiful lamps out of twigs, and he's made these Japanese gates, and whatever he does is just beautiful. I love Dan.
Dan has always been an artist, and he's always had a sense of style. He's sort of made an art out of the way he does things.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. And he
gave me a gift when I got transmitted. He made me a beautiful painting of Avalokiteshvara with some writing and, this great handwriting he has. But he also made me a brown Roxu with a howling coyote on the back of it.
Oh, my God. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
That is amazing. Well, I remember you giving an acting class, sort of a presentation, because a class would have to keep going on and on. But you might have kept going on and on at Zen Center. But I remember either you brought Peter Berg in, or did you bring him there, or were you just talking about his, oh God, what was it called? Peter Berg.
Planet Drum.
Yeah. And
Planet Drum and bioregionalism. I was probably talking about it.
Yeah. But
there is a story about the classes. I wrote a book. I don't know if I sent it to you. It's called The Lone Ranger and Tonto Meet the Buddha.
Yeah, I went over the whole book with you.
Oh, good. Okay. So for 40 years, I've been running these classes where I use meditation and then a whole bunch of improv exercises to soften people up. And when I put a mask on them and hold a mirror up in front of it, the character that they see in the mask will take over for around 10 minutes. And they'll have 10 minutes of freedom, free from self-consciousness, self-doubt, anxiety, anything. And then by the time I've given them 3 different masks and repeated that, and they've found 3 different characters in their psyche, they're ready to hear Buddha's discussion of no fixed self. So it's the way that I was able to combine my Buddhist practice and my acting practice. It's been fun.
That was the book about the Lone Ranger meets, what's it called again?
The Lone Ranger and Tonto Meet the Buddha. Those were alternate chapters in the book.
Right.
About the Lone Ranger and Tonto being lost on the desert.
Right.
Out of work and fat and out of shape. And they see this little Asian guy camp there, and they run over, and he jumps up and he takes such good care of their horses that the Lone Ranger decides he must be the highly trained servant of a wealthy man, and that maybe they'll hang out there a while and see if they can get a loan to get back to L.A. And, of course, the Buddha reads the whole thing. And just like Milarepa's teacher, he sucks them in with the idea of some hidden treasure and gets them building a stone house and this and that. And eventually, each one has their own, teaches them to meditate. They have their own Kensho experience. And Tonto goes back to his Mohawk people. And at the end of the thing, the Lone Ranger and Buddha are walking off. The Lone Ranger says, "Did you ever think about show business?" It's great fun.
Yeah. I'd spent about a week on that book. And then that was the book about masks, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
right. Yeah, that was really interesting.
That was a crazy bastard of a book. I'm amazed that it got published. But this book, Zen in the Vernacular, was a kind of way to talk about, an attempt to talk about Zen practice and liberating it a little bit from, Japanese hierarchies and Japanese authoritarianism and some of the high Episcopal stuff that Richard Baker added into it. I think because he found it easier to ask for big money if, he had this really impressive, dignified scene. Because what Lou told me was that, when Richard Baker had a beard and Suzuki Roshi was going to transmit him, he said, "Well, I'm not going to be a priest." And I'm, he was like a hippie.
That's right.
So, but that changed.
Right. Right. That's true. That's true. He didn't want to do it. He was in Japan 3 years. He's the co-founder of Tassajara. And I don't know if there'd be a Zen center now if he hadn't been there all along. But then in 1968, in the fall, he went to Japan and he didn't come back till the fall of 1971. And I did a podcast with very interesting guy named David Kubiak, who knew Dick in Japan in that period. And he said he was the coolest guy. He said, to me, he was just the epitome of Zen, you know. He said, and then David visited him. I think I helped arrange it at Green Gulch. And they had both had these Maine connections, very close Maine connections. And David said, he said to Dick, he said, what's happened? You become an Episcopalian. Just like you just said.
That's what I called it, high Episcopal Zen.
Yeah. Well, it was it was one of the phases of Zen Center. It seemed like the only thing in the world, you know. I call it the imperial era.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I look at all the changes I've been through, why should I deny Zen Center its changes?
Right. And it was a lot of fun, for me anyway.
Yes, without a doubt. And it felt Richard Baker had a knack of making things feel special.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know, he made Zen Center feel like the coolest game in town.
Right. Yeah. And after him, it moved more into the institutional phase.
I think so. And, you know, I'm a little disturbed that all the old hands, the people that literally knew Suzuki Roshi, other than maybe Reb and Paul Haller, they're all gone.
Paul was after.
Oh, he was. Okay. Well, I mean, they asked Ed Brown to leave. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I know.
You know, I mean, he gave the rights of his book. He gave Zen Center over $1 million from that book.
Yeah.
Richard Baker made him sign the rights over.
Yeah.
And he asked me to come and represent him to argue against Zen Center throwing him out. I guess they just couldn't take his, you know, emotionality, but it doesn't bother me.
Right. I have a whole section on Cuke.com about that.
Oh, really? I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, with a lot of comments and, well, you know, one problem with institutions these days is they're all gun shy. They're shy of being sued, of hurting people's feelings, of making them feel uncomfortable. That's really what the thing with Ed got down to. A woman felt uncomfortable about some very innocent things he said.
I know, it's crazy. He didn't. I mean, she asked him which bathroom she should use as a trans person. He said, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Use the one you want. And I guess she felt she was being dismissed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's something like that. Anyway, and then you see, then they wrote him a letter. We've gotten another letter of complaint about you. And Ed's emotional. He got angry. And they said, well, if you're going to get angry, then you can't come back here and you get more. And, I have one letter in that section about this is a classic case of administration intimidating employees. You disagree with us, you're ostracized.
Yeah, well, they did that. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Honestly, they did that, David.
But again, that could be looked at as a phase. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it's funny, the interesting thing is, that if you look at each person involved in this, they're all good people. It's a problem getting authority and power and being an institution and trying to hold on to your empathy for other people and your broad-mindedness. It sort of pulls you into wanting to serve the institution. And that's what happens with institutions. They serve themselves.
Well, I completely understand that. I mean, what I felt, quite frankly, was that they were protecting the brand, that the institution to some degree had become a brand. And they had to worry about protecting it because the livelihood of a lot of people depended on it. But this was one person who got exercised.
Yeah.
And I guess what I felt from this meeting was that there were some people who had maybe long-standing grudges about things Ed had said to them at some time or another, and this was maybe the time when they, settled up. I don't know. That's what I felt. I don't want to name names or go into it too deeply, but
no,
I was disappointed, but I tried my best to speak up for him.
Yeah. Well, Ed is an open book. He lets it all out, and it's just so different. People there are people in Zen teachers, or people of authority in general are more controlled and more control their face, how they are seen. And Ed will sob and get angry and confess. He's really something. And he's so creative.
Whatever he is he's authentic. I just put it that way.
Boy, is he. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. You go back. I want you to list the books you've done, and
okay.
Of course, I remember the first one very well, but you say it.
So the first book was a kind of study of the radical anarchist left during the 60s, and it was called Sleeping Where I Fall, and it was put out on Counterpoint. Counterpoint published it.
That's a good publisher.
Which is a great house in Berkeley run by Jack Shoemaker. Then the second book, came out in 1999.
Well, I want to say a little more about Sleeping Where I Fall. It also tells a great deal about you and your life and just who you are. And anyway, you're also you're not hiding anything either in it.
No, I feel if you're writing a book, you better tell the truth. I mean, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
So the second book is called The Rain Man's Third Cure.
Right.
And it's about mentors and teachers. People that were important in my life, people that taught me deep lessons. And in every place and arena of my life, there was some kind of key man or woman that was a teacher. And then again, there's a lot about me woven into it. But the point of both books is more like I'm the thread that the pearls are threaded on. It's not to say me, me, me. It's to give you a reliable narrator and to tell you what was going on.
Yeah.
Then the third book was this book, The Lone Ranger and Tonto Meet the Buddha. That's on Inner Traditions. That's a slim little book about the mask workshops and Buddhism and using improv and masks to teach liberated states. Then the fourth book was my first book of poems called The Tongue of a Crow. That's by Four Way Books in New York. I'm working on my second book of poems. And then the fifth book was actually two books, but the publisher put them together, and it's called Zen in the Vernacular.
Right.
And that's going to be out in March of this coming year, 2024.
And I spent a week with those books too.
Yes, thank you. You gave me a blurb, which I'm so appreciative about, David.
Yeah. I really hate giving blurbs, but it worked, and I feel so much.
I'm a blurb whore. I like to help people. If I like the book, I'm a blurb whore. If I like the book, I'm giving you a blurb, man, because authors need it.
Yeah, but I'm not a good reader. I'm a very slow reader, and I'm sort of insecure. Am I doing justice to it, and this and that.
Oh, get over it.
Yeah, I did.
I love the blurb.
Yeah, I did, but I put a lot into it. I took it very seriously, and I think the idea of putting them together is good. I think that was the right thing to do.
Well, the one book was about, kind of the practice of Buddhism, and the other was how to practice in the world as a Buddhist.
Right.
Like there's a lot of political stuff in it. How to move through the world and in the political world without creating the problems you're trying to solve.
Right.
Without surrendering to rancor and judgments and divisive thinking. And so, but they wanted to put them together, so I was not going to complain.
Yeah. That's smart. And what one thing you're, in terms of your political comments, and it's more than just political, you're saying that this is part of your practice. You can't turn your back on the world. And these are the things you think are important for us to keep our temple clean. And one thing you point out, I think is so important, is heaven. If we could do it, it would be a miracle. Is to get money out of politics. But wow.
Yeah, Jerry Brown came over to have coffee. He likes to argue with me, and he was a mentor, and he taught me a lot. And I think because I didn't try to capitalize on our relationship or go into politics, he had a lot of respect for me. And he came over, and I told him about my 3-step program to really diminish the authority of money in our electoral system. And he said, well, that's absolutely right, but it's never going to happen. And he's probably right, because our entire system is organized around collecting and dispersing money. And the news media makes money by keeping everything heated up and talked about like a horse race and a competition and a threat. And so it's just all woven into place. Everybody's making money except the urban and rural working people. And it's dividing the country. There's no regulations on our social media. And these algorithms are making people think that the garbage they run into is objective fact. And we got 70 million people who voted for a rapist and a grifter and a guy who doesn't pay his bills and tried to overthrow the government. So we're in serious trouble.
Yeah, we are.
I think we need people who don't lose their cool and who can stay calm and say, well, what would you think if you learned that this was true? Would that change your thinking? Well, there's some people that nothing is going to change, but there's others that would say, yeah, that would make a difference.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to look at it, is not to lump them all together. As say, if we're talking about people who would vote for Trump, our vote for this, for this, all these ideas that are really against the programs that are against their best interests, that there are some of them, there is a percentage that can be swayed. You can't just lump them all together and say we'll never get to them.
Right. And you don't have to sway many, David. You only have to sway 2 or 3%.
Right.
One of my mentors in this book, The Rain Man's Third Cure, was quite a conservative Republican man, quite honorable, quite a wonderful guy. And, he was a Republican. His name was Carney Hodge. And he was the head of the American Symphony Orchestra League, and he was on the Arts Council along with me. He was the only Republican on the council. And he was the person that, when we were all shredding each other over $1 million budget, he said, well, listen, you're Jerry's boy. Why don't you tell him to put $20 million in the budget? See if you can convince him and give us something to work with. And by God, Gary and I went to see him, and he did. So, I have no problem with Republicans like that.
Oh, no.
This was a stand-up man.
When I was working with the nuclear freeze, a lot of our most active people were Republicans. I mean, our office was in U.S. leasing, which was had a Republican owner, and I focused on communicating with Republicans and retired military people, and bringing military people to conservative people to talk to them about it.
That was a good idea.
I just felt that was so important. And anyway, that was a great movement that really united a lot of people. Unfortunately, people are under the opinion that that danger has gone away. Jerry Brown is one of the people that realizes it hasn't. And
no, it's a great existential danger.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's just by good luck we haven't had a nuclear disaster.
That's true.
I mean, I just can't believe that people just accept it as, a given.
Yeah.
And the very fact that they exist is what's enabling Putin to hold the world at bay.
Yeah.
And stop them from coming in and stopping his invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah. It's a threat that is imminent and immediate and is there all the time. And people don't think about it. They think, oh, wasn't that taken care of? And what do you think about climate change?
Yeah, well, that's the other existential threat, and I don't know. Everybody is so invested. My father told me in 1970, the winter of 69 and 70, he came out to Olima and he spent time at Olima. And, he most of my life, we didn't get along very well. I think he was afraid I was an idiot and that I needed to be toughened up. So we didn't get each other.
Uh-huh.
But he came out to this commune and he really, at one point he was stoned. He was sitting there at a table with two Hells Angels, popping Secanols and drinking whiskey. And he said, "You're a better man than I am, son." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said this, and he pointed to the room. And it was a shambles. We were all trapped inside in the blizzard rains of 69, and the place was unkempt, and kids were crawling around, and it was a mess. I said, "Dad, this isn't even a dress rehearsal." He said, "No, but you share what you have and you take care of each other." And he got it like that. And so I said, "Well, how about a little advice? I could use a little advice." And he passed out at the table. And then about 2 minutes later, he sat up straight. And this is what he said to me, almost word for word, and it's in the book. He said, "Son, capitalism is dying of its own internal contradictions. And I ought to know I'm one of them. The people running it don't give a shit about you, your children, or their own children or grandchildren. They've paid their dues, and they want to get what's theirs out of it. They're going to sell everything that's not kneeled down. You think it's going to collapse in 5 years. It's going to take 50. So you need to hang in for the long haul. You need a plan. You need to keep your head down and take care of your family and your kids, because it's going to be very bad." And that 50 years was up about this year. So, and I've seen nothing in all the intervening years to contradict anything he told me.
Yeah. I'm happy though to see how positive you are in your actions, and it's sort of like we do what we can. It's like St. Francis was asked. Well, he was raking or sweeping or something. No, he was hoeing, and he was asked, what would you do if you were told the world was going to end in 10 minutes? He said, I'd keep hoeing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's the look in the mirror factor. You know, you can either put yourself to sleep, keep your head down. My feeling, I have this little practice I call radical optimism, and it's based on one incontrovertible fact, which is that we never know how things are going to turn out.
That's right.
So based on that, I can say, as long as I keep my shoulder to the wheel, there's a chance things can break my way. And it's like buying a lottery ticket. The odds may be long, but there's a chance. And the only way I can keep my shoulder to the wheel is by remaining optimistic and hopeful and in a good mood, because that's the way that I'm the most powerful.
Yeah.
If I give up, there's no chance that my agenda is going to come in.
Yeah.
So I call that radical optimism, and that's how I keep going.
Yeah. Well, Suzuki Roshi said, well, I usually just call Shunryu Suzuki because I don't want to use that word Roshi. But he said that he thinks there'll always be war, but we should always work to prevent it and end it. You know,
yeah,
and I recycle here, and
me too.
Fanatically, and I go to centers where things are recycled. There's a lot of recycling going on with local people. There's do-gooder recycling done by foreigners, but I tend to relate to the poor guys that are going around picking up all the cardboard and plastic bottles and even old people with bags,
right,
walking, doing that.
Are you in Ubud?
No, we live in Subud, which is on the edge of Denpasar, but they don't separate trash here, and now there are 31 landfill fires going on in Indonesia. The whole trash collection thing has collapsed here in Bali, and it's they've known about it. It's exactly what you said. There's no solutions because not everybody, but there's too many people that just want to get what they can, and to heck with everything else. But I keep, I compost, and I've tried to get our, we have a housekeeper, tried to get her and people to separate their trash, but it's symbolic because it's not separated where it goes.
Yes, I get it. Hey, David.
Yeah.
I see my wife has just come in and she's bringing my dinner in.
Hey, but this is a good time to call it a day. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, let's do it again. I could talk to you for a long time, but
yeah,
I want to eat my dinner now.
Yeah, well, that's good, and I'll go have a late breakfast. So, hey, thanks a lot, Peter. This has been great. You're really fun to talk with. I appreciate all the good you're doing and all that you try to do, and how you have woven practice, Buddhist practice, but really just practice. It has no name, into your life.
Well, I'm sincere about wanting to do a chapter 2 with you. So whenever you feel that you want to do that, I'm up for it.
Well, let's give it a few months, huh?
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I plan to be alive that long.
Yeah. But if you want to do it earlier, just let Beth know.
All right, David. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yeah. Take care. Great talking to you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So thanks a lot, Peter. Hey, now, we talked about doing another one at the end. So I'm going to get hold of you and see if we can schedule that. Not sure for when, but it will happen. So thank you very much. Thanks for everything you do. And until we meet again, I'm DC Booba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dogette Bandita, Feline Manis. Guest Dogette has gone back to her home. Her people have come back from America, and so we only have Bandi and Manis. And dear lovely Katrinka, and we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.